FromSoft is probably one of the most discussed game companies of all time. Monthly discussions of the difficulty of Souls games, many YouTube channels about challenges in games or their hidden lore, games as old as Demon Souls still getting consistent fan art. And with the near release of Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon, people have been reminiscing on Armored Core, FromSoft, and their entire mecha game catalog. FromSoft has been intertwined with mecha since close to the beginning. From Armored Core probably being the longest mecha gaming franchise, to Ace being the second most notable mecha crossover series, even making a licensed game for Gundam Unicorn. Much like the mecha genre as a whole, FromSoft as a company is one that is very much misunderstood in my opinion, both by outside observers and some of the people who consider themselves super fans. Both Armored Core and the Souls games are treated by these people as these games that solely exist as a test of gaming skill, these hard to adjust to, hard to beat, yield gamer games that are soul-crushingly difficult. And they're so much more than that. These loving stories made by people who have things to say and make these works of art that let you experience these worlds and what they say in unique ways. In this video, I hope to act as a guide through at least some of these worlds and their stories of the systems we live in, the destruction that comes from focusing solely on individuality in the face of systemic oppression, and the many people who want to change the status quo that keeps forming over and over again. Armored Core 1. The story of this game is really interesting and very intriguing throughout it, but the gameplay is very janky, which was mostly fine until the last two levels very much spike in difficulty, and what the game expected you could do with the control scheme. The mecha designs have honestly really grown on me, despite going into the game disliking the general, very Yeel-Yobot style. Same with the visuals as a whole, which are probably some of the best in its entire generation. I assume the customization of this is insanely easy to break, but I really don't think that's a bad thing at all. Being able to break games is fun. Although it does feel like playing as a super tanky, slow Yobot would be hellish in how they expect you to move. Same with an entirely movement-focused one, seeing as it feels like a lot of the times enemies just hit you even if you are moving very erratically. Taunting, in my opinion, is also way too slow, to the point where it is more annoying than adding to the challenge of the game. The enemy AI is too accurate in my opinion. It's annoying and makes a lot of the game feel kind of random with whether or not you get hit. The last level, it kinda sucks, but it sucks in a fun way. The first half is mindless once you learn that you get a refill halfway through. And the second half is this platforming section, which is very funny, but also, the game never teaches you how to do this. You literally just can run past the final boss of the game, because why would you not? You don't have to fight them. Not fighting them also makes it so you can miss the entire big plot twist of the game, which is kind of funny, but also kind of bad. I like how it leaves a lot of the story open to interpretation, which is something the franchise as a whole excels at. The only stuff that's really definitively explained is about Chrome and its allies. The only characterization being done in retrospect after you kill someone is funny to me. It reminds me of the BBs in Metal Gear Solid 4, which is something I liked, but I know many did not. The entire story is really cool to me. the corporate war stuff, the stuff with 9-ball at the end of the game. I really like the twist in the second to last scenario, or at least it was the second to last for me. It might happen later or earlier in some Youts. I only have played Chrome Yout because it was the first one I got, and I wanted to do this from that first impression. And having that twist of being betrayed is really cool to me. The bugs. I love the bug plotline. I think that's so mecha and cool. Armored Core. Project Phantasma. This game is really good. Introducing the Yina is one of the best decisions the franchise as a whole ever made, both as a story element and as a gameplay one. Even if I think this is not really that good of an Yina, I wish the final fight was more interesting beyond just being an HP sponge with what feels like luck-based missile attacks. But other than that, it's just really good. Having an actual story and characters feels really refreshing after so many of these games had like a single character at most. Stinger being this recurring villain was really fun, even if I feel his last two fights are kinda lame. Sumika is a character that is interesting in concept, and that's enough. It really captures the intrigue one excelled at, but instead of being intrigue about the world and how it operates, it's about the story of what Project Phantasma is and what Stinger wants and who Sumika is, which I think is interesting. The intrigue of these games is the best part in my opinion, and some of the later games are really lacking in that, I feel, which makes them feel empty compared to the ones that excel at it. So in conclusion, FromSoft does it again. They make a game again, but this time there's a woman. Peak. I kneel. Also, probably kinda bad if you don't transfer data. Playing this game without an already built AC seems hellish, but you could probably just Yina grind for money. And that's kind of a problem with most of the games that let you transfer data, in my opinion. Master of Yina. This game is really good. Being mainly a Yina base is really fun, and all the Yina fights are well designed. Even if it feels like some builds are very favored over others. 9-ball, fucking 9-ball, what a guy. They're insanely good in this. Is it probably just them doing the final villain of Votoms? Yes, but also, it's better than when Votoms did it. The final boss, I feel, is kinda poorly designed, because it's entirely down to just not getting beam sabered, which kills you instantly, but it's awesome. So I don't care if it's poorly designed. I think I want to just gush about 9-ball as a character. Making what in the original game was simply this physical representation of the system that ruled this world and oppressed the people within it, into this character who isn't just oppressing to oppress, but is instead trying to legitimately fix this world that was destroyed by humanity. It feels like it fully calls into question the actions of your character. This person fighting entirely for revenge, who kills people entirely unconnected to it, just to destroy the single person holding the world together. Is it correct to destroy the system? Is your character moral because they accidentally destroyed it? I feel these questions are kind of focused on in 2 with Leos Klein. I think with this game especially, the first generation of Armored Core is my favorite, especially if you include 2 into Another Age, which I think you definitely should. with this game specifically being the best of that generation. Armored Core 2. This game is solid, which is probably both its greatest strength and greatest weakness compared to Armored Core 1. While Armored Core 1 was this very ambitious game, this one feels both a lot less janky, but a lot more safe. I like how it's about Mars and Mars colonization. We need more Mars content overall. The upheaval of the corporation-based stuff with both LCL and Klein's introduction is really interesting to me. This game is much more straightforward story-wise compared to 1, which, depending on your point of view, is either good or bad. I think it's both. I think it adds some things and takes some things away. Some of the gameplay systems feel very unneeded. Like, the heating system doesn't feel super necessary or anything, in my opinion. Recoil from being hit sometimes is way too much. Like, I completed the arena 100%, and it's perfectly 50-50 between annoying versus actually fun and skillful. I think it's sad how tanky units feel so needed for the arena. I don't think tanky units are that fun, so feeling forced to use them was lame. I want to end my discussion about this game by talking about its villain, Leos Klein. Leos is intended to be you from the PS1 games, or at least Master of Arena. And I think he's one of the more interesting characters in the entire franchise. And honestly, in mecha media as a whole, alongside Nineball. This man who sees the world changing solely because of his single action. Now you're getting that action, or at least the consequences of it. The man who threw the world into anarchy, now wanting strict supervision with him at the top. A rebel who knows that people will rise against any attempt at oppression because he once was that person that goes against it. The world he describes is just this vague gesture of control because he's not able to give anything else. He's seen the world under Nineball. He lived through the ways of old. He knows that no one wants that world, but he also knows no other way to live, so he lies. He claims he's fighting for a state solely dedicated to Yavins, claiming to fight for this world he clearly knows will be seen as more free, while fighting for the exact opposite, for more control. He knows what other people want, but refuses to fight for that. That's so interesting to me. To me, it truly reads as someone who knows nothing else than the world he destroyed. That's why his last question is the same as Nineball's. What's your wish? This desire for you to be able to move the world forward in a way he wasn't, and maybe you do end up moving the world forward. We never know how this world ends. Armored Core 2, Another Age. This game has a lot of problems, in my opinion. The main one being that it just doesn't really have a plot. Nineball Seraph's fight at the end is very cool, but it's also basically unbeatable without cheesing the AI. This is also the first game where the 1000 ammo machine gun doesn't feel good to me. I wish it was better. I feel like I just don't have a lot to say about this game because of its lack of plot. The gameplay is good, it has a lot of interesting missions, the new parts it introduces are interesting. I wish you could get the second orbit cannons at any point other than 100%. The last 7 missions being fight 1 to 3 ACs is boring and bad. I just really wish I had more to talk about, because this really feels like an anticlimactic ending to the original continuity of Armored Core. Armored Core 3. This is definitely an Armored Core game. Please do a new plot. This being the same thing as Armored Core 1 made me appreciate Armored Core 2 having one character a lot more. Gameplay is maybe the best, maybe the worst out of these games so far. Fixes a lot of the jank 2 had, with heat being too annoying and recoil from being hit being too annoying. But like, now it just feels very easy. I never struggled in the arena, didn't even change my AC at all. The hardest part of this game was grabbing a hidden part I didn't even use. Probably has some of the coolest set pieces with like the Ewans and the two big robots. The final area is aesthetic. But also, I don't know, the big MT hit harder in 1. I think if I played this first, I would like it a lot more, but it just feels like the same thing again in a lot of ways. It doesn't have the ambition a lot of the previous games felt like they had. This is the first time I got the Moonlight though, and that made me feel really cool. Also just, it feels like a lot of the customization is held back by stuff just being bad and unoptimal, which is lame in a game all about customization. Silent Line, Armored Core. I really enjoyed the plot of this game. Fully going and asking, what happens next after the giant shakeups that these games end with? Even if it asks those questions kinda too blatantly at the player, but I feel like the gameplay holds this game back. The weapon breaking system is annoying more than interesting, and the mission design isn't that memorable, besides a small handful of standouts. Also, over-reliance on just do the mission good for secret parts. The arena is fine, I guess, if overly easy. I don't really have a whole lot of thoughts on this game on its own. Armored Core Nexus. This game has really high highs. The entirety of Episode 7 of the Evolution, Genobi being cool, the focus on ancient tech, the fucking ending of this game. All these highs are held back by poor explanation of game mechanics. Tuning is not mentioned at all in this game, except in the key guide for the garage, which I didn't check until like the end of the game. The change of the save system and feeling overall unpolished. Maybe I would have loved this if I got to experience it for the first time again, but I just can't do that. Its ending does set up Last Java nearly well, which I'm happy about, because upon finishing this game, I was kinda scared that a sequel would make the ending of this feel less impactful, which this arguably does. This ending would be much cooler if it was just the end of the world, but I would much rather get Last Javen than having this ending be a bit cooler, you know? Armored Core 9-Breaker. This game doesn't have a plot, which means I didn't feel the need to slog through this game, which is just a worse version of a feature that has been in this franchise since the second game. If you really like the arena, this is a fine game for that. I really wish this added more interesting to the world building than a single implication that Degen is connected to the original series. The idea of a 9-ball controlled by an AI based on Leos is really interesting. I just wish it was in a different, better game. I feel the need to explain of what the next arc even is, because it's probably the only Armored Core thing someone who genuinely knows the franchise won't have heard about. Armored Core Tower City Blade, not to be confused with the cancelled anime series Fort Tower Song, is a 5-chapter manga released in 2007, wrought by Issei Hyoju, mainly known for light novel manga adaptations, and I'm pretty sure with story by Hiryoku Goto, who is a producer and publicity guy at FilmSoft. I say pretty sure because there's a chance every internet source is just yawg about this. To truly understand Tower City Blade, I find it important to go into the complete history of Issei Hyoju's works and how they led him to the point of drawing this manga, and what him being chosen as the artist might say about the work, and maybe even the franchise as a whole. That's a joke. I'm joking about that. A simple plot synopsis of the manga is basically just girl's dad died. Girl fights using her dad's mech. Girl wants to join dad's old paramilitary group. Paramilitary group forces her to go to the arena to join. She does that. It's a pretty simple work overall. So now onto Armored Core Tower City Blade. This is fine. Very short, which is good in my opinion. Also very clearly set up for something else I'm unsure exists. Dialogue sounds more like how people who like Armored Core the game talk about it than logical in-universe dialogue. The translation I read was pretty bad, which isn't on the work itself, but will affect your experience with it. Story kinda just felt like them doing Master Arena, but like boring. You know, person joins Arena to avenge parents who got killed by high-ranking Arena member. That's Master of Arena. Feels like it approaches a theme, but it's too military-pilled to say it. Your dad didn't aim for the core of the AC, not for any care for other people's lives or anything. He was just a super badass that executed everyone he beat. Is a lamer version of the Kira Yamato, but also it means her dad is Whitebeard from One Piece, which is funny. One of the final bosses in this manga is a guy with moonlight and a parrying blade. This makes him very non-theatrical. So in the end, this is Armored Core Yay, so it's good. Armored Core, Last Raven. It feels weird finishing my last PS2 Armored Core, but I'm really happy it ends on such a high note. This game definitely has some problems, mainly in its gameplay, but looking back in retrospect, they barely feel notable. This is probably the Armored Core with the most fleshed out story, which is either positive or negative, depending on what you're into Armored Core for. The very defined route system hurts the role-playing elements, unless you only play one route. One also had routes, but they were much less defined. It didn't feel like you had to go through and do a Chromion, and an anti-Chromion, and a non-affiliated run. You played the game, wrote your story, and moved on. This game kinda disincentivizes that. But for me, that's not the main reason I go through these games. And this more fleshed out story was consistently some of the best the franchise has ever given us. The intrigue of the rebuilding of the world after Nexus, Jacko's motivation, Zeneda's character, what her dominant is, what Evangel's entire deal is. All of these elements swirling around each other, and your actions simply diverting that swirl to different endpoints. This is the first time an Armored Core game is entirely focused on a single event, the 24-hour war. This short war that can change the world in so many ways. It's so interesting to me, these systems getting torn down in such a short time. I find so many of the ideas this game presents just so interesting. I think it presents itself as this almost comedic tragedy, the most complete and final showcase of this twisted beauty that is being a Yavin, that this entire series focuses on. You destroy systems on a whim, you kill other Yavins for no purpose other than because that is what has been set up for you. Why did this war have to happen? simply because a single man decided that the only way a situation would be solved was reducing a war to a single person. There's no reason Jacko could have just sent everyone he had against the Pulverizers. Would have been easier. But no, that's not how Yavins live. It must be one person. These Yavins don't live in a nest anymore. They're not a monolith anymore. They're just individuals. Alliance winning will inevitably lead to the end of the world, no matter how they win. They won't destroy the Interscene, so they will end the world. But Vertex isn't much better. It's the ego chip of one man, who doesn't understand that pure individualism isn't the way to live. Evangel is presented as the foil to Jack in this, and in Nexus. But he's not. There's no real difference between wanting to be the dominant and wanting to find the same dominant. Both ideas have the same central flaw of only caring about the individual. Zenaida isn't really any better. She's just more honest. She doesn't cover up her view with sayings of dominance or saving the world. She's just a Yaven, so she fights and kills. You save the world and she fights you, because that's what Yavens do. None of these people are moral. They kill and lie and take what they want. That's just how this world is. And in this game, that world ends. The world of Yavens dies in the final offering to their own twisted beauty. While the term is still used after Last Yaven, this game is very much the end of Yavens as a concept, I feel. From this point on in the series, you're much less a mercenary and much more a soldier, as the series moves towards more direct and linear stories. I think the original Yaven concept the series focuses on is so interesting on a story level, both for what it allows and how it's used. From a gameplay perspective, it allows the freedom of mission choice most of the games focus on. You're a mercenary, so of course you have some choice on what jobs to take. That freedom is also the core of the role-playing elements the series has. Maybe your character is interested in human plus tech and decides to find and fight them when given the chance. Maybe they're an attempted do-gooder who chooses missions that help the innocent, choosing to fight escaped bioweapons instead of striking rockets. This kind of questioning is definitely intended, I feel. That's why Armored Core 1 had multiple routes, because they knew people would be intentional with what missions they picked. I think one of the most interesting things about how Yavens are used is how they are used thematically and morally in the franchise. They're pretty consistently shown as at least kinda sympathetic. Many of them are shown to be only doing this because they have to, or for good reasons, even if what they're doing is, killing, striking walkers or homeless people. Yavens are the system in which power uses its power, but they themselves are not power. Not to say most Yavens are moral. When Leos Klein gave them the opportunity to become that power, many did in a heartbeat. Many of them are stated as just being psychopaths that love to murder. But those are also victims. Who wouldn't go crazy after being forced to kill so many people for no reason? When you have to kill to live, you might as well enjoy it, I guess. Is that really less evil than killing people while still pretending to be moral? A murder victim probably doesn't care if the person doing it was laughing or crying while doing it. I think the franchise does also see some beauty in this way of life. To fight and die, all to live freely. To clad yourself in this armor of self-expression, and fight as you wish for what you wish. To be able to rebel against the systems. To be attacked by the systems you work for. All of this is tragic, but also beautiful in its own twisted way. Armored Core 4. This is the first Armored Core I had beaten before starting my full playthrough of the franchise. I had played a couple of missions of one, maybe like half of 3, but this is the first one I beat. And looking back, it's about as I remember quality-wise. My perception of it has changed due to going through the rest of the franchise though. This game is interesting, a new type of gameplay that feels both more casual friendly, similar to the original, and not dumbed down. There's some of the most striking imagery in the entire franchise. Like, the tower fall, the lance ship, the womb, the eyeball walkers, all some of the best set pieces in the entire franchise. But I don't know, something about it just feels kinda lacking, I guess. I think the thing it's lacking is the intrigue that has defined this franchise. Most things in this game are either told to you straight or not mentioned at all. And I think that's not super interesting. So many elements of the world seem interesting, but they're not explained at all. I also don't vibe with the designs in this game much, but maybe they'll grow on me like the previous gen's designs did. I like a lot of the non-player units. The final boss is a great design, and the big sword guys that you had. But I don't know, the AC design palette just seemed really restrained. I'm probably just driven though. They've already grown on me across the game, and I like how my AC turned out. I don't like some of the control changes. I wish shoulder buttons weren't their own button. I wish I didn't have to map straight to L1 and R1. Stuff like that. Probably a me thing, though. I think the story is interesting, at least to me. The literal sins of the father plot being a unique mutation of the regular ideas of AC is really cool to me. It being this more personal story about this one person is neat. It's interesting ideas, I don't know. I think it's cool. I do kinda just wish we just played as the operator though. Separating her and the Raven feels unnecessary. They are basically treated as two halves of the same character. I wish we got more White Glint. They didn't feel important enough to make the ending impactful. I think the ending is impactful, but more despite White Glint's involvement rather than because of it. The visuals and meaning of it are interesting and engaging, but not the emotional element. I think this game would have been better if there was a game before it that fully set up the world. I wish I knew the history of the world and what Lynx and Nextra and the AMS were before this. I don't know, it's a weird game to start the generation off with, but it's also a unique game, and that's good. Armored Core 4 Answer. I'm writing this section right after getting my first ending of 4 Answer, to give a bit of a first impression. This game is really solid. Probably more solid than both 4 and like all of the non-numbered titles. This is both its best aspect in comparison to 4 and its worst in my opinion. And you're turning to a more normal Armored Core system than 4 brought. I preferred the shop, guard, stabilizers, and tuning all being the same menu. And I preferred 4's Arena, both because of how it's laid out and how you slowly unlock it. I think I might find the plot of 4 more intriguing, but I think 4A right now is definitely better. It explains a lot of stuff for it, and it explains itself better than 4. But I don't know, it seems kinda simple so far. I love the set pieces in this game. The focus on fighting giant arms fort more than smaller machines is so cool. Really is the most cinematic Armored Core so far. I also really find the Earth-Cradle split interesting. And now, my post-game opinion on 4 Answer. This game both improves a lot on what 4 built, and takes away some of its nice elements. Feels like FromSoft has really gotten used to the PS3 after 4 felt like they were still getting their bearings. I think the story of this feels kinda undercooked in segments. The ending of League Out feels like it implies that Orca is a like fake organization in ties with the League, but like that kinda ruins any intrigue of Orca Out. But the hard end of Orca Out plays into that, so I don't know. I think this game feels better and faster compared to 4 base, but that might have been a build thing or a trick of the brain, but it felt better. I love the focus on arms parts. Fighting these huge machines feels really good. It does feel like this nice parallel to how this is probably one of the games where corporate control is at its strongest, with even the opposition seeming to be fake. I'm probably a closed plan diehard, but I think League Out is probably the only bad one. Wind is a hypocrite. The jobs of Ravens are to kill people. Many probably have either a direct or indirect kill count in the millions. Yet the closed plan, literally everyone dies. I feel even old King Out is at least honest with just being a murderer. I think my main complaint with this game is that the difficulty is very inconsistent. I was able to easily sweep the arena with a barely changed starting mech, but the answer took me like an hour. By the way, the answer is one of the best missions in the entire franchise. It's so cool. Also, I wish there were stupider parts. This game gives us White Glint as a normal design, but we don't get any AC as cool as the one at the end of 4 or the big ass sword Jones. Give me the big ass sword! Also, I really like the idea of them bringing back the protagonist of the previous game. You know my thoughts on Leos Klein. I think this game kinda fumbles it. They aren't much of a character at all. You could probably make some analysis that the arc of Line Arc is the same as theirs in 4. This good, hopeful idea being twisted by the world around it into just meaningless opposition. But also, I don't know. That's basically only told to you through a loading screen description. Line Arc becoming corrupt isn't plot important at all. Armored Core V? This game is cooler than I expected from what I had going in, but it is still a very odd game. One of the largest mission counts of any Armored Core game, but only 10 of them being story ones? Much more talkative characters than ever. Despite its length, I honestly find the plot really interesting, and hope Vardic does a direct sequel. Also, it's just as likely the follow-up I wanted was lost when the server shut off, because a lot of stuff was lost. The post-story plot with the Men of Honor and Zodiac is really cool, even if kinda underdeveloped, despite filling 83 missions. The Zodiac's fall being just as meaningless as their creation is really interesting, and Yozuri is probably one of the most fleshed out AC characters. The dialogue of this game is really fun, even if it does sometimes feel like MCU quipping, including being overly goofy at the young times. Yozuri and Flan have some cute moments which are nice. The Zodiac stuff is really well written. The Chief is a treat. The game as a whole really feels like a return to the 1 and 2 gen style in some ways. Hidden parts in the stages, a much more free-form plot where you can lead your character in many different ways, a main villain that feels like a combo of 9-Ball and Stinger. I honestly feel the main problem with this game's plot is that it feels unfinished. Its setup, I assume, Bardic Day pays off, more of a Ground Zeroes than a Metal Gear Solid 5, you know? But what it sets up is so interesting. What the corporation is, what RD's deal is. Are Yoshi and Flan gonna kiss? The gameplay of this game is really fun. I love jump chaining throughout cities, it feels so fluid and nice. Ultimate weapons are a very gimmicky addition, but one that just feels cool as a concept. I imagine this would be amazing if you played through it co-op with a friend, which was probably the intent. I love how this game looks. I was scared it was going to be more militaristic, but it's very much not that. I love how beam sabers look in this game. They remind me of Aura Swords and Wings of Beyond. The final boss of this game is really cool, even if I despise one-shots, which this one had for me at least. Beam sabers in this game rotate from being insanely broken to garbage depending on the encounter. It destroys RD, but chugs balls against Chief, for example. This is either good or bad, depending on how you feel about Beam Saber, and how you feel about customization per mission. I find the naming of things in this game very funny. You play as the Resistance, fighting against Father, who controls the city, which is protected by the police, and the Corporation. The Corporation employs the Chief. It's very knockoff 1984, which is funny. Welcome to Watt Syncron's unscripted discussion about customization in video games, especially Armored Core. I think there's two ways you can look at customization. Either it's a form of player self-expression or it's a puzzle to be solved. I think Armored Core usually leans into the first rather than the second. The first is you can make a build and that's your build for the game. It might not be an intended build, it might be an intended type of build, whatever. Like in Dark Souls, it's also usually like this. You can be a spellcaster, or a cleric, or a big sword guy, or a bow user. You shouldn't be that last one, that fucking sucks in those games. This is like what I think is the better choice usually, because I think player self-expression is cool. But I think the latter version of customization is also interesting. Like, if, say, in Dark Souls, you are able to use any weapon. Dark Souls kinda has leveling up, and Armored Core has money requirements, but most Armored Cores kinda don't have big money requirements. You get a lot of money in those games. But if it's a puzzle, it's like, okay, for this boss or this mission, machine guns are better, or big swords are better. So I should switch to that, and then I'll have an easier time. And then the next mission, it's like, oh, melee's bad, I should get like a sniper or a bow. And it's like, that's now how you play that mission. And it's like, each scenario, you need a new, a different thing. And it's like, I think it kind of depends what you want in games, and it's kind of a difficulty thing. But I think also, sometimes games try to do both. Take for example, like, a lot of Dark Souls games will have a single boss gimmick weapon. Like, Elden Ring has the Godslaying Spear for the snake. And it's like, that's a really cool moment, but it also means if you have a build that doesn't work super well with it, you're kind of just worse off entirely because the game decided to. But it's also like, Elden Ring specifically has it's very easy to Yi-spec. So you could, theoretically, go Yi-spec to be good at using that spear, and come back, and then Yi-spec back. It's like, I don't know. And I think some Armored Core games definitely fail at balancing the two. Like, Armored Core 2's Aina, I remember. A lot of 2-gen, I feel. Yeah, 2-gen. Maybe 2 specifically, I'm thinking of. Yeah, I'm thinking of specifically 2. Kind of fails at this. Where most of the game you can play using your build, but then every, like, at the end of the Aina mainly, and like a couple of missions, it really feels like they expect you to have a specific build, which is usually a big tanky damage guy who uses like energy weapons. And like, yeah, I don't know. I think it's not really like a Yod block, because you have money to just build that. But also, it's kind of annoying that you can't undo with your build that you prefer in your playstyle. Like, I imagine this also could be just my experience, because like, I imagine if you build a tank from the start, the game might suck because you're just bad at movement. You just cannot move as the game expects you to at points. Like, the main thing that could possibly fully wall you out of something is like jumps in these games. Like, think about the end of Armored Core 1. There's a bunch of big jumps you have to make. So if you are playing as like a tank, you probably won't be able to make those. Just because you won't have enough energy to fly that high when your boosters are so weak. And it's like, that's kind of bad, because the rest of the game doesn't really... I guess Armored Core 1 especially does have a lot of platforming, so it does kind of teach you to have a feel about that is good at platforming, but it's like, I don't know, it's the big final battle. It feels like you should be able to use your guy. You just can't. I remember Project Phantasma. I struggled against the final boss of that game hard. The only real bosses I have struggled with in the entire franchise are Phantasma in that game, Nine-Ball Staff in Another Age. Honestly, I struggled a good bit against all the final bosses in Another Age. Some stuff in Last Raven. Last Raven's a very hard game. And the 2 final boss I struggled with. And some of these I could just... It just took me fucking struggling and struggling and struggling. Like, Nine-Ball Staff I beat with my normal build. I just had to learn that you kind of gotta wall mess with him, because his AI doesn't work super well if he's close to a wall, because he'll try transform to plane mode and that'll mess him up. So he's just a lot easier if you keep him at a wall. And I think I also beat Zaneta in... I think I beat all the Last Raven bosses with my normal guy. And it's like, those guys were just very difficult. But then, like, Phantasma. I just could not handle Phantasma until I switched to just, I think it was the grenade arms just could kill him super fast. So you didn't have to try. And it's like, oh, I don't know. Yeah, this is just an impromptu rant about customization, because I felt like I hadn't really given my thoughts on it in this review, and I feel like I should. Yeah. Armored Core Verdict Day. This game is wacky. The economy sucks. I don't remember ever getting more than $100,000 on one mission. I lost money on most of them, despite using an energy weapons build. Probably kinda hellish if you don't save transfer. The gameplay is honestly the stuff I have the most thoughts about with this game. Ultimate weapons got nerfed, making them much worse and much less fun. You already had to lose half your weapons and couldn't use your weapon hangers to use this. Making you also unable to play for 2 minutes is bad. It's not like ultimate weapons are at all better in this game. You only unlock them after beating every mission in the game unless you save transfer. Like, I used ultimate weapons a lot still, because this game is kind of bullshit. But they didn't have to nerf them, I feel. I honestly feel like this game might be close to impossible without save transferring, or like a bunch of money grinding. UNACs, which are like AI controlled AC partners, are like almost a necessity. Also take a bunch of money to upgrade, even ignoring the money spent buying parts and how they make you lose extra money. I think the story is interesting, but like V, really underdeveloped. Being a like super far out sequel to V is cool, but also it feels almost completely unconnected. There's no intrigue that the series excelled in so much. None of the characters are super interesting besides Maggie. Making you play all the order missions is so weird. Like, why separate them if both types are mandatory? I guess it gets us the twist moment where one becomes a story mission, which is cool. I don't like the map design in this game as much as V. They discourage jump chaining, which was the best part of V's movement. The story of this game is weird. I really don't get what the fuck it's trying to do. Like, I get the plot, but I don't get the themes really. Puts a lot of focus on you, which makes it kinda hard to yeet in my opinion. Like, the corporations don't really need to exist, I feel. They're just there to be there, it feels like. The main villains either just want to fight, or are a nihilist. Like, I don't know what it's saying with that. Like, what does your character winning say in this game? Like, I guess it's kinda just doing one 9-ball again. I don't know, it doesn't feel as fulfilling. The Foundation Man isn't in control of anything. It's not oppression like 9-ball. He's just a guy. Your winning doesn't change anything at all. This game directly compares your character to the MC of V, but they aren't really similar. The Foundation is much more similar to them. And I don't know, maybe that's the point? I think you could probably yeet a cool story into this game, but I don't know if that yeeting is in the text. The final boss of this game should have been a cooler fight, I feel. The design is really good, and the introduction is cool. But for me, it just ended up being cheesing the first form with pile drivers, then missiles and sniper rifling the second half, which was just the first half but lame. It didn't feel high energy or intense, it kinda just felt like an inevitable win if I yeeted the second half with any amount of health. I probably could have done it without a UNAC, I feel like. The UNAC system felt really cool as an idea, but kinda underdeveloped. The pre-made ones seem like just the obvious better option than making your own, but maybe that's just me being bad at the customization. Honestly, a lot of my problems with this game could just be me being bad at it. I don't know, I beat V pretty easily, getting a bunch of money, and this one felt like a much more janky experience that was harder in an unentertaining way. I think one of the most interesting things about Armored Core as a franchise is how it uses ancient/lost technology. From the intrigue behind Markuma Millennium and Human Blossom the Original, to the disorder units of Armored Core 2, and Other Age's use of One-Era machines as those ancient machines. Silent Line using that same feeling but for artifacts of the direct previous generation. We broke down and they. Nexus and Last Haven using these ancient machines as the ultimate test of society and your own resolve. Nexus ending with the feeling of them completely wiping the world clean. And then Last Haven goes back to that world and has those same ancient machines be the end goal of everyone. Destroying them, becoming one with them. They're the litmus test for if the side you chose is strong. Stronger than the past they struggle against. If you're stronger than that past. Armored Core 2 does the same with its final boss, Belial and Leos Klein as a whole. It's this man completely trapped in the past, unable to live in the world he created, now bound in the armor of an even more distant past. An armor named after an animal representing rebirth, and the concept of the connection between parent and child. Leos refusing to embrace his role in moving the world forward for the next generation, still clads himself in the armor representing that role. I think that shows how this series treats ancient technology more than anything. It's what led to the point we are at, but it's also what we have to move past to achieve better things. It's something people cling foolishly to when they could live better leaving it behind to rest away. Armored Core V and Vardic Day do something similar, but a lot less directly. All of the technology in Vardic Day is ancient technology, seemingly from the days of V. The final boss is a twisted version of White Glint. The ancient technology in Vardic Day is simply a specter of the past that decides to haunt the world for no reason other than to haunt it. It existed, so it must still exist. J representing the same thing Leos did. Someone who cannot live without the world they were born into. So they embrace that world and live simply to fight. War is part of his existence. Vardic Day ends in a similar way that Nexus did. The Foundation Man refusing to believe humanity could ever exist without destroying itself triggers an apocalypse in this already apocalyptic world, activating ancient technology all around the world, hoping to destroy it. But we never get to see what happened after this one. We're just asked to think for ourselves. The question if humanity can live without destroying itself under the weight of its own past. I feel like if you've seen Armored Core discussion online, it's probably at least touched on the topic of realism or something similar to that. Like this idea that the games are these clunky mech simulators that make you really feel like a pilot controlling a robot. I think that's a bad way to look at the franchise. It's like, it's true in a sense, in that I think these games do capture the feeling of piloting like a armored trooper from Votons or something like that. But I don't think it's realism, really. Like, by Last Raven, I feel, especially, you're expected to be, like, bunny hopping. Like, you're not meant to be feeling clunky in these games. The movement in these games is very fluid once you get used to it. Any realism is just there being a good amount of learning curve. Like, 1-gen, you can schmoove in those games. Especially, like, if you're used to bunny hopping and stuff like that. It feels super fluid. The main, like, clunk in those games is just, like, PS1 game stuff. Like, it feels like they didn't have enough time to playtest. So it feels like you, like, run out of ammo too quickly sometimes, and it feels like the beam saber is too hard to hit, stuff like that. It's not the movement at all. The movement is super fluid from game 1. I think, like, the movement gets kind of clunky in, like, the PS2 games for a bit. I think by Nexus it's kind of fixed. But, like, the first section of PS2 games, I think is probably the clunkiest the movement gets. And I think a lot of Armored Core fans only really played 3. That's kind of just the vibe I get from the community. From, like, this specific sect of the community. Which is usually, like, mecha fans more than Armored Core fans. I never really see Armored Core fans. I don't really go out to look for them. I feel like most Armored Core discussion I specifically have seen is from mecha fans as a whole. And I think the way they're looking at the series is very wrong. Like, something like Yobat a Chemical Drive or Super Control Mecha MG, fucking, what's their name? I forgot the name of the company. Sandlot? Sandcastle? Sandbox? Sand something. Their mecha games come much closer to that realism. And even stuff like, I had a thought, but I forgot it. Yeah. I'm sorry. This is an impromptu rant. This isn't scripted. I felt like I should put this in. So I have more discussion on gameplay and also because I kind of like impromptu games. Rather than, like, more well-constructed analysis. So, like, and by the time of the PS3, these games are just nonsense with the controls. Like, you can fucking fly in 4NC. Even without, like, the basically infinite flight codes. Not codes, regulations. You can, like, go super far in those games if you know what you're doing. And then by B, fucking jumping, like, building hopping, is the most crazy stuff if you, like, really get some chains going. And, like, have a mech built for it, which I did because I love reverse leg joints. I haven't mentioned that, I think. I always use reverse leg joints, as you can probably see from the footage I've used throughout this video. I think I didn't use them in 3-gen, late 3-gen, post-Nexus, because I used the Stinger legs. I forgot the Kronos legs. Yeah, which I think were a reverse joint in Nexus, but weren't in Last Raven? That might have been a poor like a weird coding thing with how they placed it in the menu or something, so I assumed it was reverse joint because they kind of look reverse jointed. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like the general culture consensus on this series is very odd, which I mentioned in the opening of the video. Like Dark Souls, it's very off, I feel, to what the actual games are. Like, these games are not super gritty and serious. They aren't very militaristic. Like, stuff like that is not that big in the franchise, I feel. Like, I don't know. Like, you're constantly facing, like, alien, ancient technology stuff. Like, as early as 1, you're facing genetically modified bugs from an ancient human civilization. It's not ancient, but it's like... It's ancient in the way the Tane Gundam is ancient, which is ancient to me. Like, I count ancient technology, even if that technology is modern day from our perspective, as ancient. And like, as early as 2 we have aliens. As early as 1 we have AI stuff. Like fully sentient AI. And like new type, Siren new type stuff. I guess it's more, you know, Votoms. This franchise is very Votoms. I haven't mentioned that either. It's very, very Votoms. And it's like, I don't know. I think it's kind of, I don't know, offensive to the franchise how people treat it as like not what it is, but what they can imagine it as, like as this grimdark gritty thing. Like, show someone fucking 4 answer white glint, or like a lot of 4. The 4 gen goes insane with design stuff. And I think V does also. Like, show either of the V final bosses, and it's like, how can you take this super seriously? Show them any final boss post fucking game 1, where no, even game 1 has the giant MT, which is pretty goofy. Like, I don't know. These games have always been pretty goofy on some level. And like, I love that about the games. I love how mecha is goofy. I feel like a lot of people want mecha to be this like super advanced fucking military stuff. It's just never been that. Since Mobile Suit Gundam invented Yo-Yo-Bot, mecha has been very goofy. Well, since the beginning it's been goofy, but I feel like people would go, Yo-Yo-Bot made mecha serious, but it never was. Like, I don't know, I feel like there's never been a point where mecha was what a lot of mecha fans want it to be, and I think Armored Core especially shows that, with how people act around it in the general mecha sphere. And I don't know how FromSoft fans act about it. I think most of what I've seen of them is just them doing the Dark Souls thing, where they act like it's a super hard and gritty game for real gamers. And it's just not that, I feel. Like, these games are kind of hard, especially Last Haven, the hardest game in the franchise, I feel. Except maybe Verdict Day. But Verdict Day is more hard because the fucking internet got turned off. The Verdict Day servers might still be up. I played it on a hacked PS3, so I could have joined that. Like, I don't know. I feel like people don't take this series for what it is, and instead take it as either the FromSoft game or as the gritty mecha game. And I think both of those are very bad ways to look at the franchise. Because I went into the franchise thinking of it as the realistic mecha game, I feel. I remember when I first played 3, or maybe it was 1. I played both at the same time. And I was like, it's meant to be gritty and dark and stuff. And that hurt my enjoyment of the games originally. Because I went in kinda assuming it's boring and like military. But it's not. It's very deep, I feel. Very like thoughtful on mecha and war and just the themes mecha has always been about since Gundam. While Armored Core Verdict Day was the last Armored Core game released, that doesn't mean the franchise hasn't had an impact on the gaming industry since. The most obvious example of that is Daemon X Machina by Marvelous. This game is a pretty obvious attempt at making an Armored Core, like a mecha customization game even featuring designs by Shoji Kawamori, who worked on the original Armored Core. But how does it stand, both on its own and alongside the FC's games? Well, this game feels kinda unfinished in many ways and janky in many ways. Not in fun ways, but in why was the decision they made this way? The ending of this game is a binary choice, the only one of its kind in the game. But the endings aren't really different because of your choice. Both have the oval link open, but one has humanity find a way to protect itself from Fendo particles, and the other they go to space. You have no say in either of these. They are unrelated to you. This game focuses a lot on transhumanism, but it doesn't seem to have an actual stance on it. Infinite life via cloning is bad, but infinite life via organ replacement is never questioned as fucked up. Becoming a Darth Vader-esque cyborg is a net good gameplay-wise, but being an outer isn't just commonplace everywhere, despite not seeming to have any side effects. The final choice of this game basically seems to give you the option of doing what the main villain planned to do, but both choices have a good ending. That's weird. Why even care that? The game just seems to not want to say anything, which is so weird to me. This game feels like earlier on in development they intended to have a branching narrative. Early on it says, maybe one day you can join one of the mercenary factions, which feels like it's setting something up, but it just doesn't. The Ouroboros Tower feels like it's going to have multiple endings. A mission directly goes, you can go in unarmed and talk to Grief or fight him, and you just only can fight him. These obvious choice moments don't have a payoff. Even if they never intended for there to be routes for every faction. I feel like there's at least gonna be an Innocence and Nine Hells one focusing on the transhumanism aspects, like a Panzer Crown and Gunworks one that would have just been what we ended up getting, and a Western Seven and Tears one that would have ended with the second ending of the game. This speculation is baseless, and I don't really expect it to be true. But it feels like it explains so many of the small elements of weirdness in this game. This game is very Armored-Core inspired, and especially seems to be inspired by the 4-gen games. Both Armored-Core the franchise and 4 Answers specifically are known for their branching plots. You could easily see it having been intended and then cut for time or budget. Other than my thoughts on the story, I think this game is pretty good. The movement feels nice, the mode switching is a cool mechanic. This does funnels better than any Armored Core, in my opinion at least. The Mirage mechanic feels cool to use even if it's not super flashy. The mech designs have the same problem that the later generations of Armored Core has. They all feel kinda samey. Silhouettes all feel the same. A problem greatly exuberant by the lack of special leg types. Heads all feel samey, being an especially egregious problem. They all look fine enough on their own. Everything before this was getting post-game grind, but now I am post-game, and I have complaints about the grind. It's so fucking grindy. I have to fight every boss 10 times to get their equipment. And each boss has 4 forms, all of which you have to grind to get everything. Not to even mention non-boss part grinding, which is equally, if not more, annoying. There's also the entire luck-based way you unlock partners, which are necessary if you want to play online missions offline.
The best way to grind for stuff is probably exploration missions. A single one of those takes like 30 minutes. So if you die in a bullshit way, you just wasted those 30 minutes. It's so fucking annoying. I hate it. And that's the end for now. It's not the end of FromSoft's catalog, or mecha games, or even FromSoft's mecha games. Which even ignoring Armored Core is a wide selection of works. I hope that when it comes out, Fires of Rubicon stands among the best of Armored Core's works, telling a story with its ideas of warfare, mercenaries, and the oppressive systems that make those things exist, but also get destroyed by those very ideas they create. But seeing that, we'll have to wait. At least, even if it fails, we'll have many other works, both by FromSoft and not, that tell these stories I hope you enjoy as much as me. Here's the final impromptu bit of the video. Tier list of the games. Last Raven's an S. Nexus is a C. Ninebreaker, E. Another Age, B. 2, S. Silent Line, B. D. For Answers an A. Wars an A. Formula Offense a C. Cover City Blades a C. V is an A. Verdict Day is an A. Master of Arenas S. Project Phantasma is an A. 1 is an S. And this, there's none of them. There's none of them. This is the definitive tier list. Don't come at me. Don't get mad at me. You're dumb if you disagree with me.